The story kicks off in a brutal world where the weak get spilled like cheap soda without a second thought. And in this terrible place, the strong take advantage to drink that blood up like a smoothie. In the middle of a forest, a weird creature is munching on some leaves, totally unaware it's the snack of the day. Hidden away, an archer takes aim at the animal, remembering his Zen training to keep his cool. Then, with everything ready, he prepares to go full force and blast the creature into next week. Suddenly, the weird critter gets spooked and stands there confused like a puppy that lost its ball. Right after, a background character screams desperately, calling for Sir Johan. The guy complains that the plan was to bag the prey, but instead, our hero busted the bow. Johan claims the bow broke way too easily, while the hunter cries buckets, saying it was brand new. With that, the extra says he knew teaching a noble to hunt was a terrible idea from the start. He keeps running his mouth, saying the MC could have just learned to use swords instead. But Johan hits back, saying fencing doesn't pay the bills until some rich guy hires you. At that moment, the hunter realizes the issue is cash and tells him to let's get out of there. Our hero can only think about how he needs money to survive in this rotten world. His name is now Johan Eitz, but he used to be Kim Johan before he reincarnated after an accident. Johan thinks being reborn as a noble is cool, but he's at the absolute bottom of the family totem pole. Then the biggest problem of all shows up when the hunter tries to warn him about something. A pack of wild wolves pops up out of nowhere, surrounding them like they owe them money. Without hesitating, the beasts rush the duo of hunters like it's a Black Friday sale. With that, the cowardly extra takes off running, leaving our hero in the dust to deal with it alone. But Johan just watches the scene and thinks about the theme of the world where he reincarnated. This place is basically a super realistic medieval era full of dangers and zero Wi-Fi. The cruelty is so high that bodies are scattered on the forest floor like trash. And apparently, not even the afterlife lets people rest in peace in this dump. The hunter wonders if they are from the village, but the MC says there's no way to tell. However, one thing is certain. In this world, the weak are just lunch for the strong. So, to avoid becoming an appetizer in this era, he needs one very important thing. Our hero's eyes shine, and he screams that what he needs is cold, hard cash. When he arrived here, he kind of expected a status window or some cheat skill. But since he found zilch, his goal shifted to the only thing that matters, money. Johan thinks that with enough dough, he can leave his territory and do whatever he wants. He gets lost in thoughts about riches while the hunter calls him over to see something. The man shows him a medicinal herb called Little Demon Grass. Hearing that the plant is rare, our hero grabs it instantly, thinking it must be pricey. And with a weird look on his face, he mentally thanks the universe for the cash he's about to make. Suddenly, the hunter warns that the MC dropped a bag of herbs, but Johan says the bag isn't his, and the extra thinks that's impossible. The hunter gets spooked and starts thinking something really bad is about to go down. At that moment, a loud noise scares both of them and confirms the guy's suspicions. They hear someone running through the forest and screaming desperately for help. The duo turns around and is shocked to see what's happening nearby. A little girl is trapped in a tree while a pack of wolves surrounds her. The extra recognizes the girl as Dell and doesn't understand what she's doing there. The wolves look super savage, and one of them is way bigger than the rest. Then the hunter panics and says they need to retreat and call for backup. But Johan ignores the warning and runs toward the wolves, leaving the hunter behind. Joseph screams that it's dangerous because they are real predators, but the MC says it's all good. Then he orders Joseph to rescue the girl while he draws the beast's attention. The extra can't believe a noble is risking his neck for a simple commoner. With that, our hero thinks if he knew about this, he would have learned to hunt way sooner. He counts at least 10 wolves and is already imagining the fortune he'll make with their pelts. All excited, the protagonist gets ready to face his precious sources of income. Seeing this, Joseph is totally stunned and understands absolutely nothing of what's happening. Suddenly, Johan draws a sword, and the hunter wonders what kind of weird fighting style this is. Wasting no time, the beasts jump with full force at our hero to end him. But the protagonist isn't shaken and starts attacking the wolves with his sword. One of the wolves tries to bite the blade, but the steel seems way tougher. With the impact, the beast's teeth break and it can't pierce the sword. However, right after, the sword shatters like glass and the MC is shocked. At that moment, a wolf with a bird beak bites his arm, taking him by surprise. Even wounded, our hero doesn't give up and keeps fighting the wolf pack. Seeing the scene, Joseph screams desperately for his lord who is in trouble. Meanwhile, in the Eitz territory, the lord's family is inspecting the village. The locals look dirt poor and scared of the noble's arrival. A father even hugs his son tight to try and protect him somehow. One of the nobles, the concubine Madame Eitz, complains about the terrible smell of the place. Beside her is the eldest son of the family, named Philip Eitz. And the leader of it all, Lord Gezin Eitz, also complains that the place stinks as usual. Philip mentions that Johan isn't around and offers to send soldiers to find him. The Lord gets furious about his youngest son's absence during the inspection. He yells to forget the brat and says he doesn't care if he kicks the bucket like his mother. Soon after, Gezin notices a weird pile of straw at the village entrance and gets curious. The Lord asks what that is, and one of the villagers apologizes for the inconvenience. The man explains they are traces of Johan's training, and they covered it so it wouldn't look ugly. Gessen starts laughing and mocks him, saying an insect like Johan doesn't train. With a look of disgust, he decides to investigate what's under all that straw. What he finds are deep punch marks in a tree trunk. Looking around, the Lord realizes it's not just one, but several destroyed trees. Back in the forest, our hero is on the ground with a wolf on top of him. But the beast biting him seems confused, as if it can't pierce his skin. Johan realizes that as he thought, sword fighting isn't his strong suit. So with a powerful kick, he sends the creature flying away like a rag doll. Now standing, he says he'll fight his own way and calls the wolves moneybags. In this world, the only law that matters is survival of the fittest. And to not become prey in this era, the protagonist needs one single thing: money. But to get all that cash, what he really needs is something else. He clenches his fist with all his might, ready for a real brawl. He needs strength capable of transcending the limits of a normal human. Seeing the scene, Joseph is totally paralyzed, unable to believe the noble's power. With a shining punch, the protagonist hits a wolf's head square on. With his fists, he starts sending the wolves flying one by one without mercy. The punch is so strong he lands a direct hit on a wild beast's chin. The impact is so heavy the animal's head basically vanishes into thin air in front of Joseph. The extra can't believe that strength and wonders how it's even possible. With all the wolves down, the protagonist can only think about how much money he's gonna make. He remembers he had to accept that life in this world wasn't a walk in the park. Even if he got beaten to a pulp, nobody would care what happened. The only person he could count on was himself, and that's why he started thinking. So the boy asked himself what he needed to survive in a medieval world. But he had an advantage: all the knowledge from his past life as a student. Because of that, our hero's brain had knowledge nobody else there could imagine, and he decided to use that to his advantage with sports science and high-intensity training. An old lady even asks why he eats garbage, but he says they are superfoods. With that, he created a modern training regime with close-quarters martial arts, and so his continuous training accumulated over several years of hard grinding. With a devastating punch, he sends a whole tree flying through the air with ease. His eyes shine, and he keeps training hard to get stronger and stronger. The impact of his punch is so massive the tree is completely destroyed in the process. Every training session, his body showed increasingly overwhelming strength. Now in the present, the protagonist is in a field full of destroyed trees, and over time, nobody could tell if this strength was a blessing or a new challenge. Back to the fight, the protagonist breathes a sigh of relief after finishing off all the beasts. He looks at the pile of wolves on the ground and says it looks like that was the last of them. Joseph then picks up the little girl and asks if she's okay, relieved she's safe. After calming down, he turns to our hero with a very serious face. The hunter scolds Johan, saying he was incredibly reckless. But even so, he admits he was moved by the noble's honorable action. Except inside Johan's head, he's just thinking about which wolf pelt will sell for the most. The protagonist asks what Joseph said, and the hunter replies it was nothing. Then he approaches the girl and asks if she's okay, and she thanks him for saving her. Suddenly, the little girl freezes completely in fear at what she sees. A red aura with glowing eyes appears out of nowhere and scares everyone. The trio is confused, and the girl even covers her face in terror. Soon after, the creature reveals itself to be a giant, monstrous wolf with an evil look. Joseph panics and screams that it's a real monster, not just an animal. Then he says they need to run because it would take an army to fight it. But Johan just smiles and asks the giant beast if it's the pack leader. Our hero even mocks it, apologizing for taking out the critter's minions. He feels the creature sees him as easy prey, but that doesn't matter one bit. The big wolf roars with all its might, preparing to end the protagonist. Without fear, Johan gets ready and says no matter what the creature is, he'll fight. He grabs a giant rock and says that monster skin is going to be worth even more. And in one jump, he hits the beast's head square on with the rock in a single strike. The monster seems to feel the impact, but still stands, staring down our hero. But right after, a crack starts to open on the giant creature's chest. Johan complains he scratched the beast's skin, which is going to tank the resale value. The giant creature shows its teeth and stares at our hero with a death glare. Soon after, the monster lets out a howl so loud it shakes the entire forest. With the noise, Johan and Joseph cover their ears and the girl shrinks in fear. Suddenly, the protagonist feels his strength draining and doesn't get what's happening. Next, he has a weird vision of a fight in a totally destroyed place. The guy screams endlessly, feeling intense pain from the beast's attack. Fallen on the ground, he wonders what just happened and is totally confused. He looks around and doesn't see the giant monster that was right in front of him. The creature simply vanished into thin air, and our hero doesn't know where it went. He turns around and sees Joseph and the little girl passed out on the ground. At least it seems everyone is okay and safe after all that mess. He doesn't know what went down, but puts the hunter on his back to leave quickly. He carries the two away from that dangerous place full of wolves. But while leaving, our hero can only think about the pelts he wanted. Looking at the dead wolves, he thinks next time he's going to need a cart. With that, the night advances as the protagonist walks through the dark forest. Getting close to the village, he sees it's all lit up and wonders if they're looking for Dell. He thinks that even unintentionally, he saved the girl and might score points with Dad for it. He imagines his father naming him successor for defeating a wolf pack, but he knows that's impossible and thinks maybe he can become a guard and not starve. Suddenly, he notices something ahead and goes on alert at what he's seeing. Several torches light the path, showing there are more people nearby. And then our hero runs right into a group of soldiers mounted on horses. The protagonist is totally shocked and doesn't understand what's happening there. His older brother Philip shouts, asking where he was on inspection day. At that moment, Johann remembers the inspection was today and realizes he's in deep trouble. An armored boot steps on the ground, and someone important approaches slowly. Johann kneels and tries to explain to his father that he had some unforeseen issues today. But the Lord tells him to shut his mouth and raises a giant axe with a nasty look. The Lord threatens to split his son's head open for ignoring him during the inspection. Our hero thinks he barely made it back alive and now has to deal with this crap. But he soon changes his mind and realizes he can use this situation to his advantage. With a smile on his face, he decides to create an opportunity with what happened. So he starts explaining, saying he didn't skip on purpose and was saving people. At that moment, a man runs desperately, screaming his daughter Delle's name. The girl's father hugs her, crying, saying he looked for her everywhere. He cries with relief that his daughter is okay and hugs her with great affection. Johann takes advantage of the scene and says the girl was surrounded by wolves in the forest. He says he fulfilled his duty as a son of a knightly house even while missing the event. With a bow, he asks for forgiveness and promises to keep striving for the estate. He even asks for the position of captain of the guard, leaving his brother Philip irritated. Our hero thinks he promoted himself perfectly and would hire himself on the spot. But the Lord asks where the wolves are and says he won't believe it without proof. Hearing this, the protagonist looks dumbfounded and doesn't know what to say. Johann tries to defend himself, saying he isn't lying to his father at all. He even mentions encountering the great black wolf, but no one buys his story. With a furious scream, the Lord tells his son to shut up and stop making up lies. He threatens to rip the boy's mouth open if he keeps lying to him like that. Then our hero asks if his father wants a duel and says he'll prove his skills. He thinks he didn't want to fight his dad, but it seems there's no other choice. The Lord accepts the challenge and says he'll see how skilled his son really is. With an evil smile, he orders Johann to raise his sword for a duel of arms. Our hero is shocked because he doesn't know how to use weapons and his dad never taught him. He curses his father mentally for never teaching him how to use a weapon in his life. The Lord then orders his son to unsheath his sword so the duel can start already. But Johann can only show the broken sword he had before and feels embarrassed. With that, the Lord orders Philip to lend his sword so his younger brother can fight. Philip then says it's not too late for Johann to beg for mercy and leave alive, but our hero replies he won't ask for forgiveness, since he did nothing wrong. Johann pushes his brother aside and says he hopes to learn something from this duel. The Lord just gives a mocking laugh and gets ready for the combat about to go down. Our hero believes if he shows his strength, even his father will have to recognize him. Suddenly, the hunter Joseph screams desperately at something he saw in the sky. A monstrous red aura appears out of nowhere, leaving the extra terrified, but Johann manages to block his father's axe using the sword and his own fist. The Lord attacks with more force, calling him a useless parasite. Our hero feels all the pressure of the blow and can barely withstand his father's attack. One of the extras comments that the Lord is serious and really wants to end Johann. Gessen yells that he never taught him to fight because he'd be useless anyway. He keeps saying no matter how hard the son tries, he'll never surpass him. The Lord loses it completely and screams the estate is his and no one will take it from him. Johann gets hit in the head and thinks his dad has gone crazy from the booze. With blood running into his eye, he complains he can't see straight. Suddenly, Philip screams his brother's name, and our hero looks up confused. The Lord's axe comes down hard, but our hero isn't intimidated and faces it head-on. All the villagers scream in terror seeing the brutal scene about to happen. But with his bare hands, the protagonist manages to hold the giant axe blade. With immense strength, he stops his father's blow, leaving everyone's jaw on the floor. From the impact, the borrowed sword shatters into pieces on the ground. The Lord then tells his son to know his place and looks at him with total contempt. Then he threatens that if he sees him again, he'll really take his head off. With that, the troop leaves, abandoning our hero defeated in the middle of the village. The villagers approach worriedly, calling for Sir Johann, who is on the ground. Later in a chapel, someone yells that what Sir Gessen did was very unfair. A priest named Valberg says he doesn't care if anyone hears because he's from the Vatican. He continues saying a knight should have honor and not treat his son like that. Meanwhile, Johann gets patched up and says he's fine since at least he's alive. The priest complains it was ridiculous for the Lord to use full plate armor against his son. But our hero just laughs and gets a serious look thinking about what happened. Johann laments, saying this is reality and he never learned to use a sword. Priest Valberg says Sir Gessen is experienced in battle and inherited the family techniques. He says a knight once defeated 300 soldiers alone, leaving Johann impressed. Our hero thinks technology is important and that he thought he'd beat his dad easily. But hearing about the Black Wolf, the priest's eyes go wide with surprise. Valberg grabs him and asks if it's true he saw a black wolf in the forest. The young noble confirms awkwardly and says Joseph and the girl saw the creature too. Then the priest starts praying, and our hero doesn't get the reason for the panic. Valberg grabs a book and explains that long ago black wolves were seen as a taboo, and keeps saying they are considered a bad omen and a sign of bad things. The book shows an illustration of a creature similar to the wolf he faced, and according to the priest, the clergy call these creatures an omen of death. He explains that according to old stories, these wolves bring death and blood wherever they go. Johann says he doesn't believe in that, but maybe the wolf was a warning about his duel. But Valberg smiles and tells him not to worry since they are just old stories and nothing more. Priest Valberg says maybe God is helping our hero since he is a good person, and keeps saying he risks himself for others, but the protagonist doesn't get it. He thinks he just wants money, and there's nothing good Samaritan about the whole story. Meanwhile, near the Eitz estate in the Barony of Brits, something terrible happens. Amidst fire and destruction, someone screams desperately asking to spare their life. A mother hugs her son and begs for mercy while chaos takes over the place. A knight in red armor wonders why they run if they're gonna check out anyway. He thinks the whole scene is cruel, but deep down doesn't care a bit about the lost lives. Bodies are piled up and burned while the knight thinks he just needs to do his job. All that matters to the mercenaries is doing the dirty work and getting their gold at the end. The scene cuts to a burning gate where a soldier reports to Sir Karamov. The soldier says the mercenaries finish the cleanup and hands over the Brits family ring. Without any emotion, Sir Karamov crushes the ring with his armored hand without hesitation. With a scary helmet, he just whispers the name of the family he just destroyed. He says he had expectations for Knight Brits, but he didn't last even 2 attacks. Then we are introduced to Karamov, the Sword of the Sacred Empire and the Emperor's representative. He is also the seal collector, and his mission is to punish all corrupt nobles he finds. Karamov promises that all who follow the Emperor will have infinite gold and honor as a reward. Then he orders his men to end everything, steal and burn it all without mercy. With that, an army of hideous creatures advances, and the next target is the Eitz estate. The scene shifts to a vision of 2 people fighting amidst fire and total destruction. One of the fighters is defeated, and his helmet flies off as he falls to the ground lifeless. We then see our hero's face in panic as if living that terrible scene. With a scream of terror, the protagonist wakes up sweating and totally spooked in his bed. Sitting up, he wonders if all that was just a very weird and realistic dream. He puts his hand on his head and looks very tired, like he hasn't slept well in days. And it's the Black Wolf's fault. Since he saw it, he's had the same nightmare every day. He remembers what the priest said, that since ancient times the Black Wolf is a sign of bad luck. The creature's existence was already a bad omen that spreads blood and leads to the afterlife. With that in mind, our hero gets thoughtful and very worried about what might happen. Among the priests, the Black Wolf was even known as the sign of death. But our hero tries not to care and says it's just superstition, and he did nothing to the wolf. Except he remembers he attacked the giant wolf with a pretty big rock to the head. Suddenly, he gets all awkward and breaks into a cold sweat remembering what he did to the creature. So he decides to forget about it and focus on training to get stronger. The scene cuts to the protagonist running up a hill at sunset. At his training spot, 2 guys call him a useless brat and provoke him. They remind him his dad said not to draw attention if he didn't want trouble. The 2 keep mocking, saying he acts like a dog that barks but doesn't bite. One of them laughs, saying breaking a log isn't impressive and is just a cheap trick. The other says his dad would never name a piece of trash like him to the family guard. Angry, our hero clenches his fist and prepares to show his true strength. With a powerful punch, he hits the tree square on, showing the result of his training. The 2 extras are left jaw-dropped with eyes popping out seeing the scene. The impact is so strong the tree splits in 2 and is launched far away by the force. With a victorious smile, our hero dares the 2 to repeat what they said. The extras run away terrified, saying they'll tell his dad everything. The protagonist calls them idiots and wonders how they live without thinking about the future. But he decides not to worry about others and goes back to focusing on his own training. Suddenly, he hears someone say that what the guys said is true and turns around. And who shows up is his brother Philip, saying dad won't name him for any position. Our hero isn't surprised and says he figured as much, and at least he didn't get killed. He says he'll have to find another way to make a living since he doesn't have dad's support. But Philip reveals their father actually fears Johann's power. Hearing this, the protagonist gets serious and looks at his brother with a thoughtful expression. Philip explains Johann's strength is a threat to their father, and that's why he hates him. He says dad wants obedient sons like him, not someone who follows their own principles. And continues saying dad believes one day Johann's strength will take everything from him. Our hero thinks this is all huge nonsense and doesn't take his brother's words seriously. Then Philip orders a servant to bring something, and the man promptly obeys his call. The servant then opens a bag and reveals what's inside to the young noble. Seeing the contents, our hero is surprised and wonders what all that is. And what's there is a surcoat, a long sword, and a chest plate. Philip asks if these weren't the things his brother wanted so much, and he feels awkward. The older brother says he's not a fool like their father and won't discard someone capable, and keeps saying when he becomes lord he'll name Johann captain of the guard. With that, he asks his brother not to neglect training and stop causing trouble. but our hero screams he never starts the mess and only defends himself from others. Philip then throws an object up and walks away, leaving the protagonist behind. The duo separates as the sun sets on the horizon and the day comes to an end. Johan looks at the armor and realizes it's the same one he saw in his dream. He wonders if by wearing that armor he'll have the same tragic fate as his dream, but he decides that either way he'll need equipment if he wants to win. With that, he puts on the armor and prepares for whatever the future holds for him. The sun sets completely, and night falls, ending another day full of emotions. Inside a tavern, some villagers discuss something that happened in the village. One of them says Sir Johan killed 10 wolves and saved Del and Joseph with his sword. Another man agrees and says Johan is more honorable than his father, Lord Geeson. With that, he says our hero should have ended his father that day and laughs. The man says it doesn't matter if Geeson is his dad because he's a garbage person. Suddenly, Del's father stands up and says he's buying drinks for everyone. With a toast, he celebrates that Johan saved his daughter and calls him a just knight. One of the extras then approaches a hooded person and asks who he is. The stranger says the man was bad-mouthing the Lord in front of a stranger. He also says the villagers there don't seem afraid of anything, and the man gets confused. With a sinister smile, the hooded guy says he found their story interesting. He then orders the villager to tell more about what happened, and the man gets terrified. The mysterious figure demands to know more about Johan Eitz while the scene shows the village. Far from there, our hero walks calmly through the night while whistling a tune. He thinks Philip will name him captain, and his road of gold has finally arrived. Walking through the village, our hero notices something weird and stops to take a look. He sees a drunk man on the ground and thinks a future captain can't ignore this. With that, he approaches and offers to take the man home so he won't catch a cold. But suddenly he feels something cold on his neck and goes on total alert. A knife is pressed against his throat, and the protagonist is totally shocked. The surprise is so big he can't even react to the man's sudden attack. The scene then cuts to an overview of the village looking very calm and silent. With the blade on his neck, our hero can barely move and gets tense with the situation. He wonders if the assassin was sent by Geeson but soon discards the idea. Then he thinks if it was the madam or even his brother Philip who set this up. Unable to guess the mastermind, he gets frustrated not knowing who wants him gone. Angry, he asks the aggressor what he wants and faces the situation head-on. The protagonist asks if it's for money and says he'll give everything he has to be released. But the mysterious man replies he already has more than enough money. Hearing this, our hero gets terrified and wonders what the assassin's goal is. The hooded aggressor calls Johan Eitz and says he's going to ask him a question. He threatens that if the answers don't please him, the protagonist will meet his maker. With that, the blade on his neck makes a small cut, showing the threat is real. Johan is confused and thinks the guy is crazy for wanting to end him over an answer. But he composes himself and decides he'll answer perfectly to survive. The mysterious figure then says to start, and our hero braces for whatever comes. A close-up on the aggressor's eyes shows he's watching every move of the young noble. Then he compliments the protagonist's physique and asks if he's really the son of that pig Geeson. Our hero is shocked by the question and doesn't get the reason for it with his life on the line. Not knowing what to say, he gets desperate and tries to think of a quick answer. With that, he says sometimes a lion can be born from a pig's lineage. The hooded man stays silent and shows no reaction to his answer. Our hero gets nervous and wonders if the answer was wrong and why he's not reacting. The mysterious figure remains standing in silence in front of the scared protagonist. Suddenly, the aggressor starts laughing really loud, leaving Johan totally clueless. The aggressor says he liked the answer and our hero asks to be let go, but he refuses. With an evil smile, the man says from now on Johan Eitz is his property. The protagonist is totally confused and doesn't understand anything the crazy guy is saying. We are introduced to Kagal, the greatest assassin of the Empire and poison master of the Nasos Guild. He perfected his fencing with various jobs and became known as the Poisonous Serpent. But even with all his power, the assassin had a big problem in his life. He couldn't find a successor to inherit his fighting techniques and legacy. Kagego looked everywhere but only found insects good for nothing. One of his potential targets refused to learn an assassin's skills. The man said he preferred to leave with honor, and Kagal granted his wish without hesitation. More than 30 heirs of knight families met the same fate at his hands. Impatient, he went to visit the Empire's witch to find a solution to his problem. The witch then says the disciple he seeks is at Eitz Castle, a forgotten place, and continues saying he is one of the sons of the drunk and womanizing lord of that place. Kaigal doubts his successor is in such a rotten place, and the witch confirms the info. The witch says if the prophecy doesn't please him, she'll refund his money no problem. Kagel then accepts and says he'll believe it because he doesn't want a witch's curse on him. The assassin wanted to believe her because he had no more time to look for a successor. But even when he arrived at the Eitz estate, the doubt was still in his head. He wondered if someone worthy of being his successor existed there and thought about ending the boy. Back to the present, he introduces himself as Kaigal, master of the Nessos Guild, and says the MC is his. With that, he gives our hero two choices, either learn his fencing or kick the bucket. The protagonist doesn't understand anything and can only stutter without knowing what to say. With a shout, he asks how much he needs to pay to learn the assassin's fencing. Kegel gets annoyed and replies he isn't accepting money to teach his techniques. Hearing this, our hero thinks a guildmaster is going to teach him for free. With shining eyes, he realizes he hit the jackpot and is a huge lucky dog. With that, he grabs Kegel, calling him master, and says he waited his whole life for him. The assassin is stunned and explains his fencing is that of a professional killer, and continues saying learning it will mark him as a disgrace to any family. Our hero screams he doesn't care about honor or shame and begs the master to teach him. Kegel accepts awkwardly, thinking he's never seen a brat like this before. With the deal sealed, the protagonist calls the assassin master and asks a question. He asks if he'll get an allowance since the master said he had lots of cash. With that, Kegel gets annoyed and thinks this kid is truly unbelievable. The scene cuts to Ait's castle with Lord Gezin leaving on his horse. He announces the inspection is over and he'll be away for a while to handle something. Philip then says he'll take care of the castle while the madam fans herself nearby. Then a very tense vibe forms between Philip and the madam, who glare at each other. She thinks no matter how hard he tries, the castle will be hers in the end. But Philip calls her ridiculous and says he will be the next lord of the Ait's family. Gezin gets annoyed with the fight and says he's sick of both and they can do whatever they want. At that moment, Philip warns that Johann hasn't returned yet and asks father what to do. Hearing the youngest son's name, the lord makes a face of pure hatred and fury. Suddenly, a cry for help echoes, and Philip is shocked by what he's seeing there. With a hateful look, Gezin says not to waste time with the brat, and his death doesn't matter. Philip apologizes to his father and says he understands the decision without question. But inside, he wonders where Johann is and what he's been doing out there. At the same time, in the forest near the castle, Kegel says he'll test the boy's skills. Awkwardly, our hero asks if he can borrow a sword because he breaks them very easily. The master then hands over his sword, and the young noble thanks him for the assassin's kindness. Kegel thinks the boy is reckless, and there isn't a single thing he likes about him. With that, he thinks about finishing the brat quickly and asks if he's ready to fight. All excited, Johann replies yes and holds the sword with a very weird stance. The master finds the stance ridiculous and decides this one's gonna have to go too. But the protagonist asks if he needs to use the sword or if he can fight however he wants. With an evil smile on his face, our hero says he'll fight his own way then. And without thinking twice, he throws the sword far away with all his strength. The sword flies with force and hits something with an impact so strong it creates an explosion. At that moment, Kegel realizes something and is totally shocked by what he just saw. With what he just saw, Kegel realizes all his doubts were baseless. With wide eyes, the master can't believe the strength of that brat in front of him. He realizes the young noble has simply monstrous and absurd strength. Then our hero advances, and the master feels the shockwave of a single punch from the boy. He thinks if that fist hits him, his bones and muscles will shatter instantly. Kegel realizes he's not fighting a human but a wild lion. But even so, the assassin draws his dagger to try and defend against the youth's attack. He then uses his poisonous serpent technique and rushes full speed at our hero. With that, the protagonist is shocked and doesn't understand where the master is coming from with that attack. The assassin's attack is so fast he hits the boy from below without him even noticing. With the impact of the blow, our hero is thrown to the ground hard and screams in pain. The assassin just watches the young noble lying on the ground after receiving his precise strike. He thinks that even hitting him with the flat of the blade, the boy didn't even pass out. The master says if he had been born 1,000 years ago, he would be hailed as a legendary hero. Our hero thanks the master for the compliment, but the assassin doesn't seem happy with the situation. But Kegel says despite everything, our hero has a weakness that will lead him to his end. And continues saying at this pace he's going to check out without fail, leaving the youth shocked. Fallen on the ground, the protagonist asks what the master means by that talk. The assassin explains he can't control his strength and this power will break him. Johann thinks this is nonsense and says he's not dumb enough to punch himself. The scene then shows the arsenal of daggers the master carries on his belt. With that, he challenges our hero to attack him again if he's that confident. The master says if he breaks his sword this time, he'll give the gold coins he loves so much. Hearing about the cash, the protagonist's eyes shine, and he gets all excited with the bet. So he runs and shouts the master has to keep the promise he just made. With that, the swords clash and a huge spark flies with the impact of their blow. Our hero feels all the pressure and can barely withstand the crushing strength of the experienced master. His feet slide back and the ground even cracks with the force. Even with the pain in his arms, the protagonist doesn't give up and keeps pushing with everything. Then he remembers the fight with his father and realizes the situation is the same as before. Kegel says the boy saw it and was defeated by his own strength. And the master warns that if he doesn't learn to control his power, he'll certainly meet his maker. Our hero then asks if he lodged the fragments on purpose, and the master says it's easy. With that, Johann understands he needs to control his strength if he wants to survive and become captain. Then the master explains that when he can control his strength, he'll be able to do incredible things. And to prove his point, he cuts our hero's armor using only the sword sheath. The blow is so precise, the sword sheath cuts the armor metal like paper. Seeing this, the protagonist is shocked because his armor was cut by a simple sheath. Kaigo then tells him to watch because if he uses force precisely, even a sheath cuts. With a smile, the master says he can hardly imagine how strong he'll be when he masters his power. The assassin then announces the test is over and real training starts from now on. But he warns the training will be heavy and he might even die and asks if he's ready. With a shout and a determined smile, our hero replies he is more than ready, master. The scene then takes us back to the Eit's estate, showing the castle and the village around. And we see our hero walking calmly through the village while residents watch him. With his face all bruised, our hero appears after another day of heavy training. He thinks he's being used as a punching bag and the training is too hard. Suddenly, he notices something and stops to see what's happening up ahead. A troop of soldiers is standing in front of the castle gate, and he thinks they are elves. Approaching, one of the soldiers pushes him and tells him to beat it because the area is restricted. The protagonist gets irritated and asks who he thinks he is to send him away like that. With an evil smile, the soldier asks who they are and prepares to reveal it. And he says they are the Emperor's personal mercenary corps, the Wolves of Aquitaine. Our hero gets excited because he needed job info and asks about the salary. The soldiers laugh and say a captain's salary is a joke compared to what they earn. Hearing they earn 2 gold coins per job, he is totally shocked. One of the mercenaries says what matters is technique, and our hero agrees with him. He thinks 2 gold coins is more than he'd see in a lifetime of work. From afar, a man in golden armor watches the boy's interaction with his soldiers. Suddenly, the armored man turns and stares at our hero with a very serious look. Without even realizing it, our hero grips his sword handle very tightly. A red aura takes over him, and the young noble prepares to draw his weapon. Suddenly, he snaps out of it and wonders why he was about to draw his sword. One of the soldiers calls him an insolent brat and threatens him for trying to draw the blade. But the man in golden armor stops him and says that's enough for now. With his glowing red eyes, he turns to the protagonist and asks who he is. The young noble starts cold sweating and feels overwhelming pressure coming from the man. Scared, he introduces himself as Johann of House Eitz and bows before the knight. The man then removes his helmet, revealing his face, and introduces himself as Karemov. He says he is a knight of the Imperial Guard directly under the Emperor's command. Our hero realizes he grabbed his sword without even realizing what he was doing. He thinks he never felt anything like this, not even against the wolves, his father, or his master. The feeling is that he's about to be torn apart and end up dead without even being able to fight. It's like he was prey placed in front of a hungry and deadly predator. With a cold look, Karamov orders the soldier to move because he's in the way. Our hero's heart races, and he is totally paralyzed with fear in front of the knight. The pressure is so great he can barely move and is totally in shock. The mercenaries mock him for shaking like a dry leaf in autumn. One of them tells him to be careful next time, but doubts there will be a next time. The apprentice knight Yane asks if Karamov is really letting the brat leave like that. With a smile, he replies he doesn't want to cause a scene on such a good day. Our hero then leaves and moves away from the group of mercenaries staying behind. He wonders why an imperial knight would come to such a rotten and forgotten village. Suddenly, someone shouts that Lord Karamov is there, and Philip runs out to see. He runs desperately through the castle corridors, not understanding the unexpected visit. Arriving, he introduces himself as Philip Eitz and asks what brings Lord Karamov there. At that moment, the madam appears, calling him a handsome man, and introduces her son John. She even says if she knew someone so wonderful was coming, she would have married later. But the knight ignores her completely and walks right past without giving a damn about her. Sitting on the throne, he asks coldly where Gezin is and puts everyone on alert. Philip reprimands him, saying calling Lord Gezin like that is disrespectful. But the madam says it's fine because he is the strongest knight in the empire. Philip realizes she is trying to do everything for her son John to be the next lord. With a furious shout, Karamov tells everyone to shut up and stop the arguing. He orders everyone out and asks for alcohol because he doesn't want to hear anyone anymore. The knight then says he'll wait in the castle until Lord Gezin shows up there. The scene cuts to the forest where our hero trains with his master under the moonlight. The two trade blows with their swords, and the fight looks very tight and intense. Karamov and our hero stare from afar, showing the tension that exists between them. The master then hits the boy and asks why he can't concentrate properly. With the blow, our hero is thrown back and falls to the ground with a cut on his neck. He touches the wound and realizes he is bleeding because of his master's attack. Kagegel warns him that if the sword he threw had poison, he'd be dead now. Our hero then explains the Emperor's knights arrived, and he felt something weird, and continues saying that is the Eitz house territory, and not even an imperial knight rules there. Our hero says closing the gates and controlling entry makes no sense at all. But the master asks what he can do even if the situation is very suspicious. Kaigal explains Karamov is the strongest warrior and his armor is legendary. With that, the protagonist asks if the knight is stronger than his master Kagegel. The assassin replies that if he had to fight Karamov, he would run without looking back. The young noble tries to protest, but his master tells him to shut up right away. Kagegel shouts for him to know his limits, since he doesn't even control his own strength, and continues saying what can a nobody who barely knows sword basics do. But determined, the protagonist says he will do it and prepares for training. Seeing the determination, the master accepts the challenge and calls him to fight with a smile. With that, the two go back to training and trade blows with their weapons in the dark forest. Our hero then wonders why he can't cut his master's sheath. He realizes that isn't a sword but a sheath, and doesn't understand anything. The assassin then says yes and explains the secret is the flow of power. He says it's not about swinging wildly but concentrating power at the sword tip. With that, Johann starts to understand what it means to manipulate his own strength. The master realizes the sound of the blade is sharpening and is impressed with the boy. And in a quick movement, the protagonist manages to defend against the master's attack. He thinks that is everything he learned so far and concentrates to the max. With the force applied correctly, he manages to do something that seemed impossible before. The master feels that is dangerous and his eyes go wide with surprise. Our hero then uses his strength and manages to defend against the poisonous serpent's attack. And with a precise blow, he cuts the tip of his master's sheath in a single move. With a victory smile, he celebrates that he did it and finally understood everything. He shouts that he made it, and the master is stunned by the scene he just saw. The assassin thinks that must have been just a coincidence and doesn't believe the feat. He then calls Johann, and the young noble answers all excited with his achievement. With a serious look, the master says this time there will be no mercy and calls him to fight. A serpent aura appears around him, and Kagegel prepares to attack with everything. With that, he advances with his poisonous serpent technique towards our hero. After much training, our hero scores another victory against his master. Kagegel is totally stunned and doesn't understand what just happened there. He thinks he only taught him to control strength, but he's already using the serpent technique. With just a glimpse, the boy absorbed his entire fighting technique completely. And the worst part is he uses a sword style even more perfect than the master's own. The assassin stays silent for a moment, just watching the young noble in front of him. His experience says unless luck intervenes, he can no longer defeat Johann. The master of the Assassin Guild then murmurs softly to himself. Our hero cries with joy for learning the technique and getting a chance to live. Kale then says training is over and he's leaving when the sun rises. The protagonist complains because he just got the hang of it and he's already leaving. But the master says in less than a week he became stronger than he is. He says he's glad his style won't disappear and tells the youth to live as he pleases. With a smile, he says goodbye to his disciple and says he worked very hard. The protagonist asks if he's really leaving, and the master confirms since he never stays put. Sitting near the bonfire, our hero asks if it's because he is an assassin. Then he asks if the master knows the red blush, and he says they are the black wolves. The protagonist says since he met the wolf, he's had weird dreams, and also says when the master attacked him, he even thought he was the red blush. Kaigal says if he had killed him, it would be a bad omen and bad luck has no form. He then says before leaving, he'll give some advice to the young disciple. And the first is to find a weapon that can handle his power like Danis steel. The master explains Danis is a legendary metal imbued with magic and a rare relic. Its production was lost and can only be mined in ancient ruins. That's why it's so rare. Our hero asks if it's expensive, and the master says not even with all the money could he buy it. The youth then asks why he recommended something he can't have at all. And the protagonist thinks he is hiding something being an assassin, and the master gets annoyed. Kegel warns if he sees someone wearing Danis armor to run without looking back. With a serious look, our hero says he'll remember the advice and gets thoughtful. The master then gets up to leave and tells the youth to pay close attention. And the advice is not to fight someone he can't beat and flee if in danger. He says if the youth follows this, he'll probably manage to survive in this world. With a serious look, the master says goodbye and asks Johann not to kick the bucket. With that, the assassin leaves through the dark forest, leaving his disciple behind. The lesson that remains is run if in danger, but if you can't, fight to survive. Our hero then says he'll remember the master and all his advice. The scene cuts to Ait's castle, where Karamav is sitting on Lord Gezin's throne. The madam asks if the wine pleases his palate, but he doesn't seem to like it much. Disgusted, he says it tastes like rotten pea and orders her to take it away instantly. The wine glass then shatters, and the madam feels awkward with the knight's reaction. Karamov thinks the only better wine is in Lord Gezin's room, and the woman smiles. She then suggests he go to a cozy room to rest from the trip, and continues saying Lord Gezin's room is very comfortable and he won't regret it. With a malicious smile, she suggests they could spend some pleasant time together. But Karamov cuts her off instantly and tells her to get lost and leave him alone once and for all. The waifu insists with Karamov and warns that Lord Gezin will only arrive late at night. With a red gaze, the knight is satisfied knowing the Lord is arriving. Then he says the tedious wait is over and they can have some fun. With an evil smile, he reveals his fun is a wave of brutal massacres. Outside a room, Philip is totally terrified by the noises. Far from there, our hero approaches the village and sees the place is all on fire. Not understanding anything, the young noble wonders what the hell is happening there. With the village in flames, he doesn't understand the reason for so much destruction and chaos. With his face all bloody, he admits to himself he was totally defeated. Then a knight mounted on a horse calls him an insolent brat with contempt. But for some reason, he feels he can overcome that even without any proof. A memory shows his rank 7 and 3 brothers calling him a motherless bastard. His brothers threaten him, and with that, Johann understood once and for all how cruel that world was.